So first of all, what's your take on Industrial Design Center IDC? What do you think about IDC?
It's a little embarrassing question. I don't think it has picked up the kind of momentum that it needed. It's people are looking for easy options. That's what my own contention is. Difficult problems are avoided, challenging problems are avoided. So that's my take.
Okay. But how do you think the way IDC was conceived, how do you think it was different from anything else? And
Quite a bit.
it was.
We were looking for national challenges, working for poor. It's not. I'm not saying that working for poor is the only thing that you do, but you look for challenges which are like working for the disadvantaged people, children, and things like that. Because we found that was, and world over, those are more challenging than working for, say, normal crowd. And I find that less and less people are taking those projects. Besides that, if they take it, they take a very simplified version of it. The depth is not there. That is my main contention.
So how has, since you're an industrial designer, how do you think and what do you think is really the importance of industrial design, especially in a society like ours in India?
You need to define that importance word. Important in terms of professional application, then working for industry becomes important. If you look at importance for nation, then working for NGOs and other organizations or public sector becomes important. What is right now happening is most of the people prefer to work for professional kind of organizations because first is that is paying, and it also gives them a good possibility of bringing something back into the society, which may not be very significantly different, but it helps. It's tougher. For instance, Mandar is finding it so difficult to put a map there on the station, but that's what is most needed, that kind of map. Okay, but it is a tougher thing to do. So most people avoid that. I appreciate Mandar's tenacity, pursuing it further and further, trying to make sure finally he's managed to get one station, which also with no cost to the railways. We have to pay the cost. So it's that bad, but it's still worth it. Because just imagine if people take it up and they put a pressure saying we need maps on it, then railways can't say no. So it's a good way of kind of contributing to the society.
And what do you think would be the traits of a good designer or a designer that is needed in especially India when we're talking about art?
Okay, India is a country with enormous amount of diversity. So you cannot say there's only one profile of a designer that's required for India. If you want to work for Ambani's, you need a different kind of designer, right? He should be able to contribute differently. He has to be global and things like that. But if you're working for NGOs, it's the other extreme. You're not really looking for money, but you're looking for satisfaction. Now, to me, a designer should be able to move between these. You just cannot be on one side, because some of the challenges that you get by working for NGOs might help you solve other problems also. So it's important for you to deal with the entire range. And this country, because it offers such a large range, the design and designers can be far richer in terms of experience. Very few countries have this kind of disparities. There are people who are living below poverty line, 30-40% of the people, and there are about 10 people who are in the first 50 or 100 or something like that. So you never get this kind of range in other countries.
But as a designer, like when young students and there are younger design aspirants who want to join an institute and they want to understand design, because design hasn't reached a lot of people in that sense. So if they seek to be a designer, what are the traits or what are the things that they should develop when they want to get into a profession like that?
Some people come for advice. I tell them that first is they have to be creative. That's one. That means they cannot have one solution for a problem. They need to be looking for multiple solutions all the time. And if you're good at that, then the first border is crossed. And the next border is passion. You cannot be a designer without a passion. There is something that you need to do because you want to do it. That is right now missing. If I ask younger people, there are people who from 12th standard who come and ask which college I go to, for whether MIT is good or Symbiosis is good. When I ask them, they say that which one will give you more money. When I graduated, my goal was not money. My goal was to go to specific office and work as an apprentice for 2 to 3 years. I finally worked for about 4 years before I joined here. And money was the lowest there. So these two never go together. There is no organization that gives you freedom, good work atmosphere, good bosses who are ready to discuss and also give you money. So you have to balance. And right now, most people tend to fall into the trap of getting maximum in the minimum time. But that's probably partly because of the way families, maybe there is a pressure from home or whatever it is. And I don't think the students are now ready to resist that pressure. Incidentally, almost everybody who had come for an advice in the recent past said that you go and work for a consultancy, don't work for a company, because you get a varied experience. You don't get good money, but you get varied experience, and you also get to know how the system works. But very few people join consultancies, and very few people join consultancies as a second alternative. If you don't get a good job, then they'll. So it shows that. But no architect will ever join a builder. You get about lakh of rupees, but you will not go there. You want to work in the field, get an experience, and then think of money. So that, it's already partly our fault that we've not been able to develop that value system. So that is.
What do you see as the future of industrial design? Since you've been in the industry, you've seen how it has developed for so long. Where do you see it going?
I can give you two answers to that. One is that there's a good future for design per se, including industrial design. At the same time, there's also some negative things that seem to have happened in the past, which is kind of counteracting that. For instance, China being a manufacturing place, a lot of things have shifted there. So, and since China is also developing design, over a period they will give design services far cheaper. If that happens, then the future here is not going to be as good, because then you would become a manager who outsources works to China. So he will become a design manager, not so much a designer himself. That is a danger that I see. And partly that is because our manufacturing has not developed as much as. But I believe that the government now, and including whichever government, has realized it and they want to focus on manufacturing. So if that happens, again, the thing can go up quite fast. In terms of getting jobs, you see product design people don't get jobs right now. That's because there's so much of outsourcing that gets done there. Okay? But that wasn't so earlier. Before China came in, product design people used to get the job the first, and then they would go to. And if this cycle changes, then again there would be a better job prospects.
What are the biggest challenges an industrial designer faces? Like you've already spoken about the manufacturing bit, but apart from that, working in the industry as an industrial designer, what are the bigger challenges that you face that people?
The biggest challenge is company itself. There are not many companies which support innovation. They all want to talk about it, they all want to look at it as a hobby, saying, let's see what happens and all. But such projects don't go further. Very few companies are willing to risk their money into innovative products. Even in our consultancies that we do, a lot of people want innovation to be kind of presented to them. They feel happy that, okay, this is possible. But very few gets actually into the market.
Okay. So, sir, how do you see entrepreneurship, industrial designers taking up something like an entrepreneurship, starting their own things and
actually
putting it in the market?
I am for it, for a simple reason that a company route is not a very satisfactory route. you can only go up so much, and then you cannot become a director of the company or something like that by remaining, unless you're ready to leave design and go into general management. Becoming an entrepreneur has this advantage that you can do what you want to and test your own ideas and things. Except that setting up a company in India and running it is so much of a hassle that it is not going to be so easy for people to become. There are some in IDC. There are cases who have gone to entrepreneurship. They're succeeding also, but the amount of time they're ready to spend are able to spend on design is not very high, and they feel sad about it. They're saying, "I'm not able to spend that much time." So that is the problem. If entrepreneurship becomes easier to get into, it's worth it. But not right now. Just too much of red tape around.
Okay, so some questions about your stay at IDC. So, how was your journey at IDC? When did you join IDC? And
before joining IDC, I worked for 4 years as an architect with a company. I chose that company because I wanted to work with certain kind of people and certain kind of office. Not a very commercial office which churns out design every second day. And I frankly benefited enormously by those 4 years. And most of the ideas got formed during those 4 years. Okay? And I still maintain a good relationship with that office. My boss still is 80, but he is still active. Okay? So that was a time when I thought that, and that office itself said that, look, there is such an opportunity, we want to try it. They were connected with IIT in some way. So I remember coming for an interview to IIT. It was not an interview, just to see first industrial design. And at that time I was quite interested in history of design, particularly the modern movement and Bauhaus and all that. I'd read quite a lot. So when I joined IDC, I thought it's somewhat like a Bauhaus. So you'd be able to pioneer a new thing and that. So I joined IDC on the day one when IDC started, 1970. And I made a date in such that it's easy to remember, 1st January. Okay, I joined early, but I didn't fill the joining report because it's easier to put it, remember that it's the 1st January. So I had no training whatsoever in industrial design. I was an architect, but I wanted to learn. So during the first almost one and a half year, that was a diploma program, 15 months and things like that. I used to teach and also learn. So I was a student as well as, but I didn't qualify for any exam or something like that, but I just completed the diploma, all the requirements of that. So then I got more and more involved in industry. I realized that these two professions have a lot of similarities but a lot of differences also. So I started looking more at the differences and things. At that point in 72 or so, 72, 73, 74, there were 3 years of continuous drought. And lots of problems were there about rural areas and not having water, not having food and things like that. So we got involved with a lot of NGOs, including IIT got involved in a lot of NGOs. During that time, there was also interesting discussions on the idea of development. When you say you use the word development, it means many other things to many people. So the idea of development reaching people and its relationship with social justice was most discussed at that time. There were a lot of new books came, a lot of thinkers who came. So we were under a very strong influence of those people. Not necessarily Indian, there were people from abroad who were, for instance, Papanek was there, who talked about design for the real world. Then there was Schumacher who talked about appropriate technology. So we realized that an India-centric model of design could come if you focus on some of those issues, rather than following a Western model and trying to do it. So, and we were not only young, but we wanted to do things on our own. We didn't want to copy anybody. So we spent a lot of time trying to develop that India-centric model. And that is where our grounding that we should work for NGOs, we should work for rural areas, started from there. Okay? And if you look at, there are three journals which came called Output 1, 2, 3. They were published around the same time. You could see the kind of problems that were tackled at that time by students. In fact, most famous and talked about was a gamela that construction workers use, which is not seen as a design problem at all, but we studied it and found many things out of that. So you could see that focus changed purely because the atmosphere at that time, both in terms of national scenario as well as thinking, promoted that idea. Over a period it changed, the political thinking changed, and we also changed accordingly. We were more industry oriented and things. One of the reasons why we were not industry oriented in 70s is because the industry itself was not developed. They were just basically either copying or projects which came from abroad, they were kind of manufacturing. That changed over a period, and our focus changed to include industrial products also. Industrial, working for industry.
So this is around
80s, when the market started opening up. But our interest in working for poor, interest in working for children, working for disabled had continued all throughout. So that is how I'm currently in affordable housing, which is really for the lowest end of the market. So my interest, all this is coming back to architecture now. I'm trying to merge the two and trying to see whether we can do something in affordable housing, which allows you. That's where the Amaya and Prasad are working to create something which can give us a contribution to the society. So finally, it's tying up.
So, what are the changes that you've seen in IDC throughout your stay here?
First is it's become big.
Okay.
Till 90s, I used to know student by name, which area he came from, whether he's an engineer, this kind of thing. Everybody, including I still know their names. If you see an older student, it's the first time I came across in the last few years that there's just too many students, and I can't handle that. And I try to do, but it's tough. So, and I'm not very comfortable with the idea that I don't know the name. So that's one change that you got. Second change is once you become big, you also lose that personal touch. Our relationship with students when it was small was very different. They were almost like friends, So we used to go out for a beer and things like that, have parties together and all. Two things quite a change. First, the number has become big, and particularly with the seniors, the age gap is increased. So they are not sure whether we drink beer or not, and we wait for a beer invitation. So that's a difference between the two. Except that 3 or 4 years ago we had a party. Out of that money that comes from latecomers, so people added some money to that and said that let's have a party. So we went to our mall, okay, and suddenly at 7 o'clock, 7:15, people started following on. Let's go. I was not sure, so I said okay, let's go. And then I realized that there is a happy hours before 8. So as soon as everybody went, they started, the real process. Then all that was over. At the end, when we came out, one student said, "Sir, we wanted to see you drunk. You didn't get drunk." Okay, so that is the kind of relationship that is there sometimes. It's becoming more difficult because the number is too large. Like there are some students I have never taught, I have never sort of met, so I'm not too sure whether they belong to IDC or not. Remembering that is not easy. So in my opening talk, I said that if you smile, I'll know you're from IDC. So that's the only rule I have. So that's a difficulty. But that is one thing that has changed. Even the faculty size has become big because more students will mean more faculty and all that. That doesn't create a problem, but there are people who don't meet every day. We started with only 4 faculty members, and we used to meet every day. So there's no formal faculty meeting. Anytime you can say, "Arey, call everybody," and then we'll start discussing. That informality is not there now, because you have to make sure that 22 people are available. So it's become very formal and all that, and we have to learn because we can't remain at that level anymore. So we learn to become a little more formal. So yes, And lastly, I see somehow education is a disaster after third semester. And that's why I don't guide projects anymore, because everybody is halfway, their one step is outside IDC. It doesn't mean that they are looking for a job. Some people may be looking for, some people are having fun outside and weekends and things like that. But somehow that fourth semester, according to me, is a complete disaster. Very little happens. I don't know whether you agree or not. Do you? Maybe I should interview you now.
So things become difficult. We don't see our classmates or people working around. The entire atmosphere of working goes down.
Yeah, everybody meets only on FB, right? That's a sad part of just take an example. I think the current submissions would be end of this month, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I don't see a single fellow in workshop right now from product design, and they should be in the workshop making things, but they're not there. They are probably now writing or something like that. No, this was not happening earlier. They would start well in advance so that you try more. See, design is also a lot of tinkering. No? You cannot be sure. You can't do everything on computer and then just go and do in workshop and it's ready. The tinkering is gone down quite a bit. It's not. So that's one major change. I find difficult to adjust. Including my consultancy project, we used to work in the workshop ourselves. We would never let another person touch it and protect our thing quite nicely. So that culture doesn't seem to exist. The way people hold their model and bring it for presentation, they feel a little upset about it. It's your baby, your creation. You need to treat it differently. So that is not there anymore. You put a model and something falls down and people say, no, it's okay. That should not happen. So that is a major change.
One thing that I want to go back to the start of IDC. I remember you, Professor Nadkarni, Professor A.G. Rao, and one more professor.
Professor Chattopadhyay. Yeah.
So, did you guys join around the same time, or did you guys join?
No, Nadkarni came a little earlier. I joined next. That is the way education program started. I joined, and Rao and Chattopadhyay joined about 6 months later.
6 months later. So they came from NID.
They came from NID.
Okay, and you together decided on the curriculum and how things were supposed to be.
So a curriculum initially was formed, but we over a period kind of worked to fine tune it and all that.
And so, what do you think are the key projects that IDC has undertaken and given to, keeping in mind the ideology that IDC has? What are the key projects that we've put forth?
Okay, there are. If you look at this decade of design, there are very interesting projects which didn't get manufactured because they are not designed for industry. They are student projects, but you see the kind of content they deal with are very different. They are more close to the society kind of thing. But in terms of faculty's contribution, to a certain extent depends on who comes as a client to you. You cannot dictate. But there are some projects which we initiated ourselves. And the first project that IDC did is what my project was, and that was design of a postbox at that time. So that was done completely free because no government would ever pay for such thing. And we presented to them, and then finally they accepted it. It was also by chance that it got accepted. Okay, what happened is Indira Gandhi happened to see one of the prototypes, and she came to IIT and saw that it is IIT's contribution. She said, I know this is in front of my house, I like it. Then they decided to manufacture it. It was that random as that. So everybody went around trying to find out how to quickly manufacture it and all. And over a period it got deteriorated. Now Chakku is done the next version and things like that. So then the next big project was telephone, which we did for CDOT, San Petro's company. But that never came up because of some dispute with the people who make molds. Some CDOT had some problem with relationship with the mold maker and all. And the voting machine came later, so that was another big project that was done.
Voting machine was done by
Professor Rao and Professor Puve.
Okay.
I did my first game in 73.
Okay.
Again, you can see the 73 spirit reflected in that. The game is called Rural Development Game.
Okay.
It helps farmer to understand farming and also how investment in farming is required and things like that. So, I mean, everything we used to think in terms of what you could do there. So that's the way the game came about. Unfortunately, in spite of the fact that he won an international award, nobody was ready to manufacture it. The only person who was ready to only company which was ready to manufacture says that we are selling fertilizers, and would you allow us to use it with money? That means jugaad khelne ke liye. So which we didn't want to do. So it remained like that. That's the idea.
Okay. Since we've seen a lot of change in the perception of people and the idea of trying to go after money instead of doing what is needful, and India, we still need a lot of design intervention, and we all can see it. So where do you think is a good point to start, and how can we make the coming students a lot more sensitive about these issues? Because it has to, only once they get sensitive will they realize the need for all of this.
It's not that we were sensitive before when we joined IDC. We came purely as designers, right? It's only because of those 3 years of drought, which actually where the entire media discussion used to be on issues of that kind, no? That started working on us. When there is an atmosphere of working for poor or working for persons in need or working for disabled, if that is a part of a media discourse, automatically you come under that influence. And I'm not saying not only media discourse in India but also abroad. Lots of interesting thinkers talked about it at that time. Now nobody does that. People talk about whether there should be malls or not, whether you should. So the discourse has changed. So I don't blame students because they don't get to hear this. Okay, they're not exposed to this at all. Except that there are few cases. For instance, there is a television program on one of the channel, I forget, which talks about people who have done exceptionally different work, left jobs and did. I think it comes on Sundays or something like that.
Sunday mornings is one of the TV
channels. So it's very nice, So that is the only thing that is available in the media now. Otherwise, most of the time it is reality shows and So I'm not saying that I don't blame students completely. It's also the whole atmosphere has changed. It's Facebook oriented atmosphere now. Where you cannot stand still. All Facebook photographs are with all kinds of odd faces. That's the way media is right now. So that is the reality. Now, education institute can change it a little through its own discourse within the students, but it cannot really completely. We were benefited by what was happening outside. There's some major thinkers who talked about, they challenged the whole idea of education, school, medicine. That was a kind of time when all this happened. Now that doesn't seem to happen anymore. It happens, but it's so small that it doesn't seem to impact students. So only is to keep bombarding. Now I have offered some students saying, I'll give you a complete data, you start designing for affordable housing. Let's see whether they come back or not. That's a test I put.